Hi there. We are moving into week 2 of quarter 2. So just a quick refresher of what we learned last week. We were dealing with forces. A force, the definition of it is a push or pull. It is measured in a Newton, which is a capital N. A Newton is the same thing. It's equivalent to a kilogram times a meter per second squared. If you forget that, which you will, you just look at this equation right here. The equation for force, F equals ma. You know that mass is measured in kilograms, acceleration in meters per second squared. So a force, a Newton, has to be the same thing as a kilogram times a meter per second squared. This is a pain in the butt to write after every answer, so the metric system, they came up with a new unit, a Newton, which represents all of those together. We also learned about Newton's 3 laws of motion. The first law of motion is the law of inertia. An object in motion remains in motion, an object at rest remains at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. It's that property of matter to want to resist changes in motion. The second law was the F equals ma, how to calculate force. You need to take the mass times the acceleration. We also reworked that in order to solve for weight. Weight is a force. It is the force of gravity on your mass in kilograms. So to find your weight in newtons, you have to take your mass in kilograms and multiply it by negative 9.8. And then finally, Newton's third law of motion is that action-reaction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. We are going to take this information and we are going to move into this week. We are going to focus our short week on G-forces. A G-force is how many times your weight you're experiencing. So that is its definition. For a G-force, and we just call it the G's, or the number of G's, same thing as a G-force. It is how many times your weight you are experiencing. So if you feel heavier than you normally would, like occasionally when you go on a roller coaster or you're in an elevator, all of a sudden you feel kind of like things are pulling you down, you feel heavier, you are feeling more than your normal weight. And sometimes when you feel lighter, when you're on kind of the top of the hills for roller coasters, or when you're in that top of the elevator and the bottom drops out from underneath you, you are experiencing less G's. You're feeling lighter than you normally would. 1 G is just your regular resting weight. So let's say you weigh 140 pounds. Okay, if you want to find what 1 G of force is for you, you just have to find your weight in newtons. So in order to find your weight, it's this equation right here. The weight is equal to your mass in kilograms times gravity, which is negative 9.8. So first thing I have to do, I have to change 140 pounds into kilograms. So 140 pounds, pounds have to go on the bottom so that they can cancel. I need to change it into kilograms. That's going to go on top. For every 1 kilogram, there's 2.2 pounds. If you don't have that memorized from last week, it's on the very top of your pink equation sheet under those conversion factors. In order to find the kilograms, you take 140, you divide it by 2.2, and you can round it differently. I'm just going to go to 2 decimal places. I got 63.64 kilograms. From there, that is my mass in kilograms. I need to just multiply this by gravity, negative 9.8, in order to change it into my weight in newtons. So I times that by negative 9.8 meters per second squared. When I do that, your weight always comes out as a negative, and you end up with approximately 623.6 newtons. So that negative sign, because it's in the downward direction. Gravity pulls from the center of the earth in that downward direction. Alright, so that is how you can figure out what 1 G is for you. And it's different for everybody because you have different weights. So for each person, you'll have your individualized 1 G. It is equal to your weight at rest. At the bottom of a roller coaster, sometimes you feel heavier. You experience 2 to 4 G's, or 2 to 4 times your body weight. Humans typically black out at about 7 to 8 G's, so 7 to 8 times your weight. So if you feel 7 or 8 times heavier, it's enough in order to make you pass out. I did include a link here that I normally show in class. It's like 2.5 minutes of the Mythbusters. Adam goes and gets to fly in planes with the Blue Angels, and he gets to experience G-forces. So they bring him up, they bring him down, and they do this kind of thing to him in order to make him feel really, really heavy and feel a lot of G-forces. He does pass out, he does puke. So if you're interested in that, please click that link and go check that out. Or you can just, it's like called Mythbusters for the Impatient, and it's Adam flies with the Blue Angels. All right, moving into what actually does this mean. So at the top of a hill on a roller coaster, you feel lighter as you fly up out of your seat. This means you're experiencing what people often refer to as negative G's. Even though they don't come out as negative in our calculations, they come out as decimals. They just call them negative G's, but really it'll come out as a decimal in our calculations. If you experience half your body weight, it would be 0.5 in our calculations. If you feel 1/3 your normal weight, it will come out as 0.33 in our calculations. So you're looking for a decimal when you feel lighter. Explain what it means to feel 2 G's. If you go on a roller coaster ride and you end up experiencing 2 G's of force or 2 G forces, you would feel 2 times heavier. Explain what it means to feel 0.5 G's. If you are on a roller coaster ride again and you feel 0.5 G's, 0.5 is a half. You would feel half as heavy, half your normal weight. For this problem, if you weigh negative 600 newtons, the negative is just there because it's always negative because it pulls downward. How many newtons would 3 G's be for you? So 3 G's means 3 times heavier. If you normally feel that 600, times that by 3, and it would be negative 1800. The negative, again, just means downward. If you still weighed this negative 600 and you feel 0.5 G's, you feel half as heavy, so you cut that in half, and it would be negative 300 newtons if you felt half a G. All right, here is how you calculate the number of G's that you're experiencing. The number of G's, or G forces, is equal to the total force that you feel, the total force you experience, divided by your mass in kilograms times gravity, negative 9.8, and then it has absolute value signs, which means if you end up with a negative sign, you get rid of it. There is no negative signs with the number of G's. All right, example number 1, you with a mass of 50 kilograms. So our mass is 50 kilograms. You experience negative 1,200 newtons of force. So our force is negative 1,200 newtons at the bottom of a hill on Wild Thing. How many G's is this for you? All right, so in order to find G's, I need to take the total force we experienced. In this case, my force was negative 1,200. I need to divide it by my mass in kilograms, that was 50, times negative 9.8 of gravity. The absolute value signs are there. I have 2 negative signs, so they're going to cancel out anyways, but if it did come out as a negative number, you just get rid of it. Okay, into your calculator, you do have to either divide them separately or put this in parentheses, the bottom 2 numbers, put them in parentheses before you hit enter. So you have to take your negative 1,200 divided by, in parentheses, 50 times negative 9.8. So please try that into your calculator, pause it for a second, type that in, and make sure you get the same thing that I did, which is 2.45, and then there's no unit behind it. You can write G's if you would like to. All right, so please check this, because if you take the negative 1,200 divided by 50 times negative 9.8 without using parentheses and without typing it into your calculator properly, it changes your answer because it does it in order. and it ends up multiplying by this instead of dividing it. So check that out for me and make sure that you get this 2.45. All right, our last example. In order to find g forces, you have to know force. Sometimes you have to use our old equation, F equals ma, in order to find that actual force. And in order to find acceleration, you might have to go back to one-dimensional motion and use our A equations as well. Okay, so this is where things get a little bit more complicated, in which we're using multiple units in order to figure out how to solve a problem. So here we go. Example number 2. U, 75 kilograms. Well, right there, that is my mass. Kilograms is the mass. You speed up from rest. If I am at rest, my initial velocity is going to be 0. To a velocity of 26.8, so that's going to be my VF, 26.8 meters per second, in a time of 2.3 seconds. So my T is 2.3 seconds. Find the g-force that you feel. All right, in order to find g's, I need to know the total force, and I need to divide that by my mass times negative 9.8, and then it is a absolute value. Okay, I have my mass, it's 75. I already have the gravity, negative 9.8. I need to find the total force that I feel. In order to do that, I need to use F equals mass times acceleration. That's the only equation we have for force. We have to take mass times acceleration. Okay, but notice I've got my mass. I do not have my acceleration. But I do have other variables that I can narrow down other equations to help me find the acceleration. All right, so step 1. I need to solve acceleration. As I look at the variables that I have VI, VF, and I have T. So if I look at my old equations in one-dimensional motion, A equals VF minus VI over delta T. If I use this, I've got all of those, I can solve for A. So VF, 26.8 minus VI over delta T, and I get an acceleration of 11.65 meters per second squared. From here, flip into a different color, I am going to take that acceleration that I just calculated, put it into my force equation, along with my mass of 75 kilograms. So I need to find the force. I am going to take my mass, 75 kilograms, and I'm going to multiply it by the acceleration that I just solved for right there. So if I take 75 and I multiply it by 11.65, I get 874, and force is in newtons. All right, so I have first found my acceleration so that I could plug it in to solve for my force, and I have 874. My last step, I am going to solve for the number of g's. I need to take the total force. I just solved for it, 874 newtons. I need to divide it by my mass, 75 kilograms, times negative 9.8. When I do that, check it with your calculator quick. Type this in. You take 874 divided by, in parentheses in your calculator, you need to put the parentheses around the 75 times negative 9.8. We will take an absolute value for that, so my final answer for my g's is about 1.2 g's. All right, your assignment this week is going to be working through a couple of problems that uses all of it that you've learned in order to incorporate G-forces, which are just the total force you feel divided by your mass times gravity. If you feel heavier, it will come out as a positive number that's bigger than 1. 2 G's, 2 times heavier. 5 G's, 5 times heavier. If you feel lighter, it will come out as a decimal. So 0.5 would tell you you feel half your weight. 0.66 would be 2/3 your original weight. All right, send me a text on Remind if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will be there on Wednesday during those Zoom sessions for the extra help, or send me an email if you get stuck. Thank you.